Hi folks, my name's Andrew Reid and I'm the Associate Head in the Department of Applied Sciences and Health. I was contacted yesterday by our Associate Dean, Doug Howitt, and asked if I would present on behalf of the motion, "The lecture is dead." It is a subject that I'm absolutely passionate about, so I was actually delighted to take up that opportunity, but unfortunately it means I haven't had a huge amount of time to prepare. So what I am trying to do is to run through a few key points just to point out why I believe that the lecture is dead. First point is really to do with our students. When I was at university, things were different and students were different. Our students nowadays have complex and busy lives. Many of them have to work in order to earn enough money to be able to fund themselves at university. Many of them have children or they have partners that they're dependent on them. And many are international. Many of our students are international these days. So we have a complex mix of students, and that means that we can't really expect them to be in one place at one time on one day to hear what I've got to tell them. No matter how good the information that I'm giving, and no matter how good my delivery might be. You might debate that given the quality of this video. For the second point about our students, I want to tell you a story. And I was visiting my neighbours the other day, and while I was there, I noticed that their 14-year-old daughter was busy in the dining room. She had her laptop open and she was doing some assignment for school, what we used to call homework. She was also watching television, and I think it was Game of Thrones, but hey, what do I know these days? And finally, she was constantly picking up her mobile and contacting her friends via WhatsApp. And WhatsApp apparently is the new Twitter, so if you're tweeting, then that's so last year. You should be using WhatsApp. The point here is that our students are very much more tech savvy than we are and than we ever were when we were at university. She is doing very well at school, so her ability to multitask can't really be disputed. She is able to switch between tasks and to keep concentration. So we've got a very, very different type of student nowadays than we had when I was a student, and possibly when you were students as well. And that brings me on to my second point. Lectures, what are they good for? Lectures are excellent vehicles when they are delivered well for transferring lots of detailed knowledge and understanding to a large group of interested individuals. And that's why they play a key role in our discipline-specific conferences. Whenever you go to conferences, you do see people standing giving lectures, and they work really well. They allow us to learn from experts, and that's their key function. When well delivered, they can also be inspiring and stimulating. So given all that, why am I arguing that they don't have a role in the future? Well, when I was at university, back in 19 Oatcake, the only access to knowledge was via the university library. If I had graduated and I was in a job, the only way I could find detailed information was to seek the use of a friendly university library. I'd need to go up 3 flights of stairs, use a card index to find the Dewey classification number for the book. Then I would have to go and find the book on the shelves, and then I'd have to sit down and read that information. That is so no longer the case. Now all knowledge is literally at my fingertips. We, the students and us, we've got tablets, which is what this video has been recorded on, smartphones, or at least laptop computers, and we can find all the information we need on any subject in any discipline that we want. Whether that's via Safari, Google, Firefox, Opera, or some of the more learned engines, such as Locate. The fact is that all that information, all that knowledge is there, and it's all available to them. What students need to be able to do is to discern what's good information, what's reliable, what's trustworthy, what's peer-reviewed, what's edited information, and what is considered poor information, so things like blogs, uncontrolled discussion fora, anything that's journalistic, and by that I mean sensationalist information. And then we need to know how to use and how to interpret that information. To do that, we've got to turn our students into discerning, self-selecting, critical researchers, and they need to have a fundamental understanding of the key concepts of the discipline to be able to interpret, evaluate, analyse and employ that information to solve problems that we haven't even thought about yet. Most of the discipline-specific knowledge that we're currently teaching our students will be redundant by the time our students graduate. And I'm not exaggerating. An example, I worked for 10 years as a forensic scientist. When I graduated in I think it was around 1984 I graduated, DNA profiling had not even been developed for use in crime investigation. No one had even thought about using deoxyribonucleic acid as a technique for identifying someone. Since I graduated, DNA profiling was first used by Alec Jeffreys, using mini-satellite loci and a quadruplex system. They looked at 4 locations on the DNA molecule. And that technique required a bloodstain about the size of a 10p piece. So you're talking about a bloodstain of that sort of size. Quite a decent sized bloodstain. The polymerase chain reaction was developed to amplify the template DNA, so the DNA from the individual. And that process enabled us to use bloodstains as small as a pinhead. Techniques for DNA profiling were improved, and eventually second-generation multiplex DNA was created using 8 areas of DNA, 8 loci, and that technique was the first one that was used to populate the very first ever DNA database, and that was back in 1985. 1995, that was. I'm jumping ahead of myself here. The process was further developed, and now SGM Plus using 11 areas, 11 loci are used. And the development of the PCR reaction means DNA from as few as 10 or 20 cells can provide a good DNA profile. And now this year, 2014, England will move to using DNA 17, using 17 areas of DNA, 17 loci, and Scotland have already moved to using the quantifiler kit, which can profile 21 loci of DNA. Further, with the introduction of DNA 17 or quantifiler, a new rapid ID DNA profiling instrument has been developed, and that means that we can now take the DNA profiler, which used to occupy an entire lab, out to the field and do DNA in situ. Who knows how much that technology will have developed by 2018, which is when our current intake, our next intake, will actually graduate. So what am I proposing as the alternative? Well, let me put something to you first of all. I'm in a lecture theatre at the moment, and I've deliberately chosen this just so that I can show you. Do you believe that this is an inspiring environment? Does this make you want to learn? This one actually is not a bad, it's not a bad lecture theatre. However, I think we'd all agree that it doesn't actually provide an inspiring environment in which to learn. What I'm trying to get across to you, the point I'm trying to make here, is that we need to move away from teaching knowledge to our students and make them self-motivated, self-assessing, self-reliant students for the remainder of their lives. And we can do that by concentrating on getting them to understand fundamental key concepts that underpin our disciplines. Confucius is frequently quoted as saying, "Tell me and I will forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I will understand." We need to involve our students in learning those key concepts, and we cannot do this by simply telling them. Instead, we need to use the technologies with which students are familiar, things like tablets, smartphones, laptops, video, audio. Allow students to fast forward, to pause, to rewind, and even silence me if they choose. Imagine that, eh? enable students to make independent decisions about the pace, the timing and the sequence of their learning, and supporting all this by providing key contact opportunities where we really explore their understanding of these key concepts and tailor that contact time to suit each student's individual needs. You can't do that in a lecture, but you can come close to it if we use the alternative technologies available to us and we use them wisely. I'll leave you with a final parting thought. In the words of Richard Feinstein, a noted biologist, questions are more important than answers. The lecture is dead. Long live learning. Thank you very much. Speak to you soon.